Hello, friends, and welcome into Seattle Seahawks Today, presented by Manscaped. When you head over to manscaped.com/chat, you'll get 20% off and free shipping on all of Manscaped's incredible products. Go check them out today. Let's talk Seahawks rumors here today on Seattle Seahawks Today. How about a potential Sheldon Richardson reunion? Now, coming to us from John Clayton says that Richardson could be a target for Seattle. Now, this would technically be a reunion for the two sides, as Richardson, as I'm sure you guys all recall, played for Seattle during the 2017 season. Now, Clayton also mentioned money could be a problem. He said the Browns asked Richardson to take a pay cut, and he ended up saying no. But for a team that lost Jarran Reed because he didn't want to restructure his deal that would have cost him anything other, he wanted a different commitment, which was kind of weird. Anyway, Richardson is one of the better interior defensive linemen on the free agent market. He's coming off a solid enough year for the Cleveland Browns. 64 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, a forced fumble. Relative to what Seattle currently has on their depth chart, it would look to me at least that Richardson would come in and be one of the best defensive linemen this organization has on the interior. Now, you're not going to cut snaps from Poona Ford, don't get me wrong there, but you look at what they have on the middle right now, where L.J. Collier, Rasheem Green are kind of inside-outside flex guys. I think they're going to play plenty of interior reps, because otherwise, how do you make everything all paired up and sitting together? Like, the math does not work out if it's just Poona Ford, Brian Monet, Al Woods, and Cedric. That does not get the job done on the interior. So from a pure talent, impact, potential perspective, I do think Richardson makes a ton of sense for Seattle. Of course, there is some negative parts on this one here as well, namely the last time that Seattle saw Sheldon Richardson. Remember, they traded for him way back in 2017. Jermaine Kearse and a second-round pick. And Richardson was not the impact player I think either side was hoping to get out of. Then he left a year after that, and it was an example of a trade that did not really work out at all for Seattle. Not that he was terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't consider him an elite player by any stretch of the imagination either. So I do think there should be some level of interest in bringing back Sheldon Richardson. Now, it's not necessarily a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, nor should it be, but especially if Seattle does not add an interior defensive lineman during this year's NFL draft, I do think it makes sense for Seattle to take a look at the market and say, hey, Sheldon, do you want to come on a cheaper one-year prove-it deal? We'll give you starter snaps, and hopefully take number 2 for both sides is a little bit more productive than take number 1 was. So what do you guys want to do? Do you want to bring back Sheldon Richardson? Get your votes in for me in the comments section. A very simple Y for yes or N for no will do. As for me, I'm down. I say I'm going to type in yes in the comments if it's cheap, of course, and if there's not lingering issues between either side. Now, the other player that was mentioned by John Clayton was one Maurice Hurst, also recently cut by his team, this time the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I will make note Hurst has a congenital heart defect that popped up during his NFL draft process and dropped him all the way down from maybe going in round 1 to all the way down in round 4. Or round 5, excuse me. I would argue that Hurst was underutilized in a poor coaching type of way by the Raiders. Now, I'm not convinced that the rest of the NFL agrees with me, but that's just my mindset there. I do think he'd be fairly cheap, given that no one claimed him when he was waived by the Raiders. His production this past season was not particularly good. Again, I don't think he was utilized very well. The Raiders wanted to use Malik Collins this past season, who was, as far as I'm concerned, actually worse than what Hurst was previously. So let's say you have your pick of these two defensive tackles, and you actually want to go at one. You don't have to, but if you do, pick a defensive tackle for me. Who would you rather bring to Seattle? Type H for Mo Hurst or type R for Sheldon Richardson. Get your votes in for me in the comments section. Now, some more on Hurst here. His career stat line is not great. 76 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, just the 8 sacks. But he has shown the ability to pressure the pocket from the interior. And I do think that is something Seattle needs. And again, if you can get him cheap, A, there's no such thing as a cheap one-year contract, or bad thing as a cheap one-year contract, excuse me. You have Poona Ford, who is locked in as your nose tackle. Some combination of L.J. Collier, Brian Monet, Antoine Woods, Rasheem Green, and maybe Cedric Lattimore round out the rest of that defensive tackle rotation. I'm not convinced that Ford, Collier, Woods, and Green really get it done on the interior. If you bring in Richardson or you bring in Mo Hurst, I feel better about that room. I feel better about where things sit for Seattle. But that's something they'll probably explore if they want to after the NFL draft. Now, today's show is presented by Manscaped, as I mentioned earlier. You can get the Lawnmower 3.0. This right here, folks, it is the #1 men's grooming tool out there. It helps you not get cut or tug or bleed or anything down there when you're trimming your hair up, although it might help you get a tug later on. Because let's be honest, guys, women don't want a bunch of hair down there. That is gross. That is not something anybody wants in their lives. And it should be the way you feel as well. Because if you look good, if you feel good, you look good, you play good, all that good stuff in there. So head over to manscaped.com/chat and get 20% off and free shipping on all of their products. That includes the Lawnmower 3.0. The perfect package comes with the most comfortable boxers known to man and that traveling case as well. And a whole bunch of goodies on top of that. Go check out all of their products at manscaped.com/chat. Let's go to Freddie Swain now. And this was, I thought, a pretty interesting note that came out of the report from Jeremy Fowler. To kind of wind it back here. Seattle had interest in Marquise Goodwin, as we mentioned on this show, before he joined the Chicago Bears. In the tweet that linked Seattle and Goodwin after the Bears signed him, Jeremy Fowler said that Seattle was high on Freddie Swain potential as a number 3 wide receiver. That they felt good about that being an option, which I find interesting because Swain did not play very much last year after being a 6th-round pick out of Florida. He was targeted just 21 times through the air, caught 13 passes for 159 yards and 2 scores. In reality, even though there was one game he started against Arizona, if my memory serves correctly off the top of my head, he was wide receiver 4 behind David Moore, who, of course, is now in Carolina. As things sit currently on this wide receiver depth chart, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett locked in 1A, 1B, whatever you want. They're both fantastic receivers, one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL. Then that leaves Freddie Swain and not a whole lot there. There's John Asura, Aaron Fuller, Penny Hart. Freddie Swain, I think, could be a wide receiver 3. I don't have a ton of confidence in him, though. And I think he'll use Gerald Everett plenty in that 3rd receiving option role, if you will. But I kind of want a better wide receiver 3 because I love to run 11 personnel. The Rams have run plenty of that. I'd like to get a better option in there. If you had to roll with Freddie Swain, it's not the end of the world, but I'm not overly confident in it either. So what do you guys think? What is your confidence level right now in Freddie Swain? Rate this for me on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being you've got almost no confidence. You don't feel good about it. But hey, at least he's played in the NFL. 10 being, Tom, you're crazy. He's going to be the best number 3 receiver in the NFL. Get your votes in for me in the comments section. Now, whatever the Seahawks do in terms of the number 3 receiver role, if they maybe draft somebody, for example, we will let you guys know. We got videos coming out almost every single day. It's at a little over 6 videos in total. Excuse me, all over the place today. About 6 videos during a given week. So head over to youtube.com/SeahawksTV if you're not watching on YouTube. But if you're watching on YouTube, just hit the big red button and subscribe. It is that simple. Join us here for videos almost every single day. Let's go to Aldon Smith now, and what is his role going to be for Seattle? Michael Bumpus, the former receiver on ESPN 710 Seattle, thinks Aldon Smith could play some Sam linebacker for Seattle. And I think Bumpus is completely right here. We'll see exactly what Seattle ends up doing. But my expectation for the role that Aldon Smith will play for Seattle in a defense that fits him pretty well, I think is to be a Bruce Irvin type of player. And the Cowboys used Aldon Smith in a couple different ways. He was their typical defensive end. He had his hand in the dirt sometimes, stood up sometimes, rushed from the outside position, and he also played some defensive line interior reps on third downs. Now, I don't know if Seattle's going to do that. I thought Smith played better earlier in the year when he was fresher and just at his best, and I think we'll see a little bit closer to first 5 games Aldon Smith than last 11 games if his head is on straight here. But I think Bumpus was right here to mention Aldon Smith at that strong side linebacker position, especially if KJ Wright does not come back. I think Aldon Smith might be your starting, quote-unquote, outside strong side linebacker on first and maybe second downs. Then on third downs, Wagner and Brooks, of course, remain your linebackers, and Aldon Smith could even kick down a defensive end. So much like we did here with Bruce Irvin, I will list Aldon Smith both at defensive end and at that Sam linebacker spot on the depth chart. I think he's going to play a little bit of both. Predominantly, he's going to be an outside the tackle player. That might come at linebacker, that might come at defensive end, but I think that Bruce Irvin style role is what Smith is going to do for Seattle in 2021.